Hello. The topic of today's lecture is the discrepancy between the academic discipline and the practice of Feng Shui, and solutions to address it. Feng Shui is an empirical science that combines the study of the principles of nature with practical techniques for locating vital energy points in the field. However, today, the Korean Feng Shui community faces an unfortunate situation where the academic sector researching theory and the group of practitioners operating in the field are disconnected and operating independently. Today's lecture will proceed in a total of 5 steps. First, through the introduction, I will examine the relationship between scholarship and practice, and then look at the blind spots of academia and the limitations of practitioners in the field. Finally, by integrating these two, we will have an in-depth discussion on the future direction of development for Feng Shui. So first up is the introduction. I would like to share my thoughts on recently submitting a short paper to an academic journal. The review of short papers is usually conducted by 3 people. One of them has pointed out that they applied only the theories found in Feng Shui classics literally, without reflecting the voices from the field. Of course, it is true that academic progress requires criticism, but I felt a great sense of disappointment that the feedback did not come from a better understanding of the reality on the ground. I believe this goes beyond mere personal disappointment and represents a significant challenge that the entire Feng Shui community must address in the future. Feng Shui is essentially an empirical science that combines the study of the principles of nature with practical techniques for locating vital energy points by applying them to real-world spaces. Groups that professionally study Feng Shui are broadly divided into scholars who establish theoretical systems based on reliable literature, and practitioners who pursue methodologies for practical application based on field experience. The relationship between academics and skills can be explained by employment. If learning is the root and the body, then the method is the fruit and the function through which the former is proven. Just as science is proven through technology, Feng Shui becomes complete only when art is combined with the foundation of learning. However, currently, the Korean geomancy academic community and the field are experiencing a disconnect, with these two axes thoroughly separated and operating independently. A contradictory situation unfolds, where the Feng Shui practitioner disparages the scholar as a pseudo-intellectual, ignorant of the field, while the scholar denounces the Feng Shui practitioner as a half-baked geomancer lacking objective logic. Although not outwardly apparent, there are frequent disputes among practitioners regarding individual theories, and the embers of a very fundamental and deep conflict between scholarship and practice still remain alive. Therefore, this article aims to analyze the problems caused by the gap between scholarship and practice, and to explore convergent alternatives for the genuine development of Feng Shui. Next is the second item, the blind spot of academia. While mainstream academia has contributed significantly to elevating Feng Shui to the status of an academic discipline and establishing its theoretical foundation, it seems to be losing its academic vitality due to a disconnect from practical fieldwork. The specific limitations are as follows. First is the absence of empirical experience and high dependence on literature. In fact, even thousands of years ago, there must have been a distinction between sorcerers who roamed the field and scholars who studied theories. It is believed that most of the Feng Shui classics we encounter today were written primarily by scholars rather than by practitioners on the ground at the time. Nevertheless, the majority of scholars leading the academic community commit the error of judging the constantly changing reality of the field by using only the logic recorded in Feng Shui classics left by past scholars as an absolute standard, while lacking the skill to interpret the land accumulated through countless field surveys. Since the actual thesis review relies on literature rather than field evidence, you should assume that it is difficult to pass a thesis without supporting documentation. Even if you are lucky enough to receive a decision for publication after revision, if you make all the revisions exactly as requested, the researcher's intended purpose or objective will vanish completely, leaving the work in a state of tatters. Second, it is a lack of understanding of microscopic observation, that is, the hail, the vital center where the Earth's energy concentrates. The ultimate essence of Feng Shui lies in accurately locating the acupoint. Therefore, research related to the hail should be described using a microscopic perspective focused on the hail itself. However, the academic community, lacking knowledge of divination, dismisses this as unscholarly. Third, there is the structural contradiction of the evaluation system. I doubt whether a significant number of the reviewers possess microscopic pressure point techniques. Even empirical results obtained through rigorous fieldwork to combine theory and practice are rejected for publication or distorted by the standards of reviewers who lack field knowledge. Reviewers for academic journals are primarily appointed from among scholars affiliated with workplaces such as universities or research institutes. This is because relevant authorities place great importance on the affiliation of reviewers when evaluating the grade or quality of academic journals. Next up, the third item is the limitations of the field. On the other hand, the group of Feng Shui practitioners dominating the field also has significant limitations. Extreme pragmatism, such as the belief that one only needs to farm well, like a farmer, or that a hawk is the only way to catch a pheasant, is hindering their academic development. The specific limitations of the field are as follows. First, it is the lack of theoretical grounds and subjective error. Some Feng Shui practitioners consider only the specific techniques they created themselves or inherited through apprenticeship to be the best. It exhibits extreme exclusivity by denying the universal Feng Shui theories established by our ancestors over thousands of years, and blindly rejecting the methodologies of others without reasonable supporting evidence. Second is the marginalization and disappearance of field technology. There are many cases where excellent pressure point techniques from the field fail to be systematized into academic disciplines, and instead remain merely as personal rules of experience before fading away. Among practitioners in the field, those who possess the educational qualifications or the ability to write papers required for submission to academic journals are extremely rare. Even if the submission requirements are met, it is difficult to cross the threshold of the institutional system, because papers written in the language of the field are often rejected by scholars. Third is academic alienation and a vicious cycle. Vivid empirical data from the field ends up hovering outside the institutional sphere without passing academic and logical verification. No matter how many travelogues you accumulate, if they are not recognized academically, they become nothing more than a personal memo pad. Now, the fourth item is the direction of convergent development between academic disciplines and technology. In order to overcome the limitations of both scholarship and practice, and for Korean Feng Shui to leap forward as a modern empirical science, a mutually complementary fusion of the two is essential. A farmer can farm well without sophisticated theories, but it is the same principle as how greater value contributing to all of humanity can only be created when those rules of thumb are established as scientific agriculture. The specific measures to overcome this are as follows. First is the realization of academic review standards as an empirical science. Academia must move away from literature-centered speculative research. Institutional flexibility must be secured in the evaluation and review system, so that empirical field data obtained through field surveys can be recognized as core evidence for research papers. Second is the objectification and academicization of field technology. Field practitioners must also break free from personal visions and stubbornness, and make an effort to systematize their experiences and exploration techniques into universally valid academic language. It is essential to create an objective manual of pheasant hunting techniques and pass them on to future generations. Since Feng Shui will disappear without successors, training future generations is essential. Third, it is to foster practical Feng Shui experts equipped with both academic knowledge and practical skills. Scholarship without an empirical foundation produces false writings detached from reality, while practice without theoretical grounding is nothing more than narrow-minded blind faith. Therefore, we must cultivate practical experts who possess both qualities and can elevate the microscopic perspective of the field into an objective academic discipline. To achieve this, We need specialized training institutions that go beyond existing theory-centered general educational institutions and enable the parallel pursuit of practical fieldwork and academic research. The fifth and final item is the conclusion. The academic logic that academic grounds take precedence and the practitioner's logic that practical field experience is everything are by no means subjects of conflict and struggle. The practical methodology must serve as the foundation for a proper and genuine result to emerge. And to enhance the completeness and universality of that result, it must necessarily undergo scholarly argumentation. Only when practical efforts to integrate theory and practice without leaning toward either side are made, can the superficial observer stance of academia and the academic poverty of practitioners be simultaneously overcome. I believe that only through continuous convergence work that establishes living field data into an objective academic discipline can Feng Shui firmly establish itself as a practical, empirical science that transcends the ages. I hope today's lecture was a beneficial time for many of you who are contemplating the future of Feng Shui. Thank you for watching. This is Hoyoung Hoon from the Oriental Culture Academy.